I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Brian Wilson.
He is the current Attorney General of the state of Maryland. He wants to be the next governor of the state of Maryland. Doug Gansler is on the line. Mr. Attorney General, thank you for joining us here on Mornings on the Mall.
Good morning.
So you had this big debate the other night, a Democratic gubernatorial debate, and the lieutenant governor admitted that he should have been more hands-on when it came to the rollout of the Maryland Health Exchange. You were pretty aggressive in your criticism of him about that, but this seems to be an admission for the first time from the lieutenant governor that things didn't go so well and he perhaps should have been more hands-on.
Well, I'm glad you understood what he said. I couldn't really figure it out as I was sitting there listening to it. It sounded like bizarre gibberish. I mean, he kept saying, well, I was in control, I was in charge, but then I wasn't. I was the head of this committee, but I really wasn't the head of that committee. And they started talking about workarounds and all kinds of craziness. But it took a long time for him to come to that, at least. You know, the reason why this is so critical is obviously manifold. One is this is literally the only thing the guy's ever managed or been in charge of, particularly since he's been lieutenant governor. And he wouldn't recognize that it was almost delusional. He wouldn't recognize that it didn't work. Everybody else called it a national embarrassment. We were 45th in the country in enrollment, and fewer than 1,000 people were actually able to enroll over the website. And for the longest time, he couldn't really come to grips with that, wouldn't show up at any of the hearings and so forth. Then he finally said that he was apologized if anyone was inconvenienced by it. Well, these are people that need to get their children, chemotherapy treatments and health care. And then finally he said, well, maybe I could have done it differently or something. It was interesting to watch.
Mr. Attorney General, I wonder, I got this really expensive mailer the other day. I live in Maryland, and boy, it was glossy, it was big. It must have cost the Brown campaign a lot of money, and they were saying some really mean things about you. Apparently you don't like children, Doug Gansler. Yeah. That's what first of all, I want you to respond to their charge that you're trying to, I guess, starve children and you never want children to learn how to read. But secondly, what does it tell you about the Brown campaign? I mean, listen, the Brown campaign, they're already doing their victory lap, I thought, if I read the Baltimore Sun or the Washington Post. They've got this thing in the bag, but boy, they spent a lot of money saying things about you.
Well, that was the one you got was actually the third one they sent out. The other two you must have stuck right in that recycling bin. That was the third one on the same subject. Huge, obviously huge money. And he's got a very uncomfortable relationship with the truth. The topic of that was that I am against expanding pre-K from half day to full day to help children and close the second worst minority achievement gap in the country, which was created under Brown's leadership. And the reality is 6 months before he ever dreamed of expanding pre-K from half day to full day, I came out in favor of it. All I was saying is it's irresponsible to say you're going to do it tomorrow. You should start with the places where it's needed most, the underserved communities, and then gradually expand it out. Then I'm running on jobs. I mean, I think that's the biggest difference between the two of us. And so I've been talking about a number of things, but one is reducing the corporate tax from 8.25% to Virginia to be competitive with our neighboring states, which will bring hundreds of millions of dollars into Maryland. And he picks this number, $1.6 billion, and says some corporate handout. Well, our state's going to hell in a handbasket economically because of these guys. They don't get it. 40 straight taxes in a row for $10 billion of the people of Maryland's money. And I guess to your last point, what to say is, he's funded by the special interest. There's a lot of people, very powerful people, that really want him to stay in power, that need him to stay in power to continue their own control of things on Annapolis and not change the culture of Annapolis, and they're paying for all these ads. Today he starts his really negative stuff. You'll have a good time watching that.
All right, so I have a question for you. Maryland has some of the most restrictive gun laws in the nation. These were supported by Martin O'Malley, and when one assumes his lieutenant governor at the time. And are you supportive of that law as it is written? Would you stand behind that law? Or if you became the governor of the state of Maryland, would you seek to change those laws? I ask this because we have recently learned through a deposition in a lawsuit that Captain Jack McCauley, who was prevented from testifying before the state legislature on this matter, says that the Maryland's Firearms Safety Act would have absolutely no effect on crime in Maryland. What's your thought about this?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if it'll have an effect. I think it actually will have an effect, parts of it. The part that I'm most concerned with is there are three types of people that shouldn't have guns. The people that have domestic violence situations, people who have mental health problems, and convicted felons. So my concern is getting the straw purchases. The convicted felon who has somebody go buy a gun for he or she and then gives them $500, takes the gun, and then can do whatever they want with the gun. And so that's the issue I'm concerned with, the handguns that are out there on the streets that are killing people. And that's the part I was actually very interested in supporting. A lot of people talk about whether we've gone too far or not. I mean, my job is, as Attorney General, is to defend the legislature.
No. Your job, if you're governor, would be to be, the leader of the state. So would you be willing to make or consider changes in that law, or do you feel like that's a settled matter and I wouldn't go there?
Yeah, I think it's a settled matter. I think there's obviously going to be, over time, tweaking of that law. They made some guns illegal and some not illegal, and they're basically the same thing. And so there's some things you could look at. But I think, over time, I'm sure the legislature will, and then I'll look at those independently. But I do think it's a settled matter. There was a lot of back and forth on it. The people of Maryland, the people that represent the people of Maryland supported it. I mean, but it certainly is yet another reason why people should make sure that they vote in 3 weeks.
Well, John, one more question. Would you, as governor, instruct your staff to prevent somebody from the state police to testify before the state legislature? Because that's what happened.
No, I would not do that. That makes no sense at all.
I have a question for you that, I've just been watching this campaign, and here you are. You're saying Maryland has, your taxes are too high in Maryland. A lot of people would agree with that. You're saying let's go slow on these, pre-K full day programs instead of just spending all this money across the state. You're talking about how 46% of people in Baltimore are out of work, and you're trying to get them back to work. And Anthony Brown and Heather Mizur, they make you sound like you're to the right of Ronald Reagan. They make you sound like you're, more concerned, like you're Attila the Hun out there. Do you feel like you no longer, I mean, you have some really reasonable positions there to suggest that maybe the taxes are too high in Maryland. Do you feel like... Yeah, I just wonder, do you feel like you're maybe not at home in the Democratic Party anymore? If you can't stand up there and say, let's look at these taxes, maybe it's not quite the right way to go, and suddenly they're making you out to be, Newt Gingrich.
Well, I think the middle class knows they're getting squeezed, and they're getting squeezed hard by these guys. I mean, 8,000 small businesses have left in the last 8 years, and they're just on a poll saying 47% of people in Maryland would rather live somewhere else, mostly as a result of the economic climate and the taxes. So I think actually most people are with me. And they're the ones that aren't seeing the issue. I mean, I just think it's that simple. It's, if we don't solve our economic viability, and these guys want to do it by more taxes and more casino gambling, then we are going to be we can't sustain it.
But with all respect, you say these guys are the Democrats who continue to win elections in the state of Maryland.
Well, I think we're going to win this election. I think for that very reason. I think the middle class does feel squeezed. I think they understand we need a change in Annapolis, change the culture in Annapolis, and bring jobs back. And the motive for bringing jobs back is to increase the tax base so that we can do some of the things that Democrats want to do, so we can close that minority achievement gap and some of the other things that are desperately in need of help. The public safety issues, the environmental issues that we have, and we have to increase our tax base to do that.
All right.
And the only way to do that is bringing jobs back to Maryland, because we just can't sustain this.
We're going to have to leave it right there.
But we have no disagreement with that, and we're looking forward to changing the culture in Annapolis as well.
Maryland Attorney General Doug Gansler, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, sir.